Hello, and welcome to This Week in Franchising. I am Ben Warren, Managing Editor for 1851 Franchise, along with my co-host, Alex Lockey, 1851 Franchise Editor. Alex, how are you doing?
Doing great. Good week in franchising.
Absolutely, yeah. Fun news roundup we got this week, so let's just jump right into it. First of all, we've got stimulus checks are finally arriving. For some people, they've already arrived. I'm still waiting on mine. But Twitter was having much franchise now that they have stimulus checks. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so a couple of people went really viral. It kind of became a bit of a meme where you're going to a fast food restaurant with $1,400 in stimulus cash. And basically the joke is, it's like, how much for the franchise? And they say, how much for the French fries? And say, no, how much for the franchise? And, you're not going to get into a McDonald's or something like that with $1,400, but 1851 does have a list of low-cost franchises. Some of them are very cheap that you can check out. And I think this story gets at the effect of the stimulus cash. That's been something really unique to our era. In '07, they bailed out the banks, and now they're bailing people out. We are getting checks, which is something to watch. These almost always lead to a boom in QSR sales. People take that check and they go to the store to spend it. That's why it's called a stimulus check. So, it is a joke, but there are a lot of real ways that businesses can kind of get their hands around the stimulus check thing. And it's worth checking out. And we've covered it a lot on 1851.
Yeah, absolutely. And we won't try to read some of these jokes verbatim, but some of them are quite funny, and we've got a collection of them in our article, so definitely make sure to check that out. Next up, businesses are also awaiting their bailout. Restaurants in particular are looking to get a piece of this $28.6 billion restaurant relief grant that the Small Business Administration is. Right now, when are those funds going to become available, and how do restaurants get them?
The good news is that they're in the pipeline. So restaurants can count on that. I know a lot of restaurants surveyed said that they're going to close in weeks or months if they don't get some money. But this is a light at the end of the tunnel. Nobody can say exactly when it will come out yet, but this is tailor-made for small businesses, franchises with under 20 units, and it's a ton of money. I wouldn't hold my breath on getting anything else like this. It is a must shoot your shot kind of moment for these restaurants that are on the ropes. And I think it's impressively tailored. It's not helicopter money. It's not just getting thrown around there. Women, minorities, veteran-owned businesses get a window. It's only going to apply to the smaller businesses out there. And those are the ones that were most impacted. It's kind of a drawback. Franchises are more resistant during pandemics because they can pool resources and strategize together. But then some of them will be cut out from this relief. And, that's what it's for. It's for people who suffered. And if you didn't suffer, then it's not for you. So that's that.
Yeah, and if you are interested in learning whether you or your restaurant qualifies or how you can apply, we've got all of that information in the article, all the pertinent links, so definitely check that out. Next up, a restaurant software company called Olio, which is a name that is probably familiar to you if you're in the restaurant industry. They went public this week and raised a pretty significant IPO at $450 million. Can you tell us about that, Alex?
Yeah, that's right. People were pricing those shares. They thought $16, $18. Day of it was 25. Last time I checked, it was around 31 or 32. So if you bought that at the IPO, then you're doing great. Olo is very interesting because it's in the third-party delivery kind of universe, but it calls itself a first-party delivery, and it kind of presents a third way with these third-party delivery apps that can charge as much as 30% of a restaurant's price. A lot of restaurants are pushing back. They say that, order from us direct. And Olo says it's figured out a way to do that. And then in the third-party space, when you have so much competition for market share, you have Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, and I know I'm forgetting a couple here. They're all fighting it out for market share. And then once they win the market share, they're going to kill their competitors, and then they'll have a freer hand with pricing. So there needed to be some meaningful competition to them. And Olo kind of seems like it. I listened to the CEO talk, and it seems like that's on the top of his mind. Third-party apps bought a lot of Super Bowl advertising. They're really getting in front of their messaging with like, we're supporting local businesses. And restaurant associations have tried to put up a fight on that, but they're not as organized, they're not as well capitalized. Maybe a company like Olo could start poking holes in that narrative. And I know from my experience, they'd find a lot of champions who are small business owners, franchisees, and franchisors.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting development. I'm very interested to see in how this can sort of change the dynamic between restaurants and third-party delivery apps, because as we've talked about before on this news roundup, that is a fraught relationship, and one that is needs a change sooner or later.
Yeah.
Finally, our last story today, small businesses are, like everybody else, preparing for vaccinations. It seems like the vaccine program is at varying speeds across states finally rolling out, and that means businesses can start to get back to work, but it also means that they need a plan to vaccinate their employees. So what is the plan? What are restaurants talking about? Or small businesses, I should say.
Yeah, it's all piecemeal. That is the great advantage and the great drawback of the US system, is that everything is kind of pieced together through decentralized authority, whether that's your franchisor, McDonald's, all the corporate locations, they are going to give paid time off for people to go get shots, but corporate locations are about 5%. And if you read between the lines here, McDonald's announced still up to the franchisors to figure out a way to get people vaccinated. It's still their problem. Well, McDonald's corporate, wins them some good press. The average retail news consumer might not know the difference between a corporate and a franchise store, so they think that every McDonald's is all the way vaccinated. Good for them. But ultimately, this is really complex. Like, how do you lead a horse to water? The vaccine is here. I would, all but skip in line because I'm healthy, so I don't want to skip in line, but I am really anxious to get the vaccine to get in there. So again, it's a puzzle for franchisees to put together. And I think that we're just lucky when you look at other countries that we're having this talk of how to get to the vaccine. The talk before was how to get to the ventilator. So things are trending up.
Yeah. Well, worth noting as well that a lot of businesses are their primary struggle is convincing employees to get vaccinated, which may sound odd to some folks, but we found a stat that said 40% of Americans have reservations about getting the vaccine. So a number of small businesses are offering financial incentives to employees to make sure they get the vaccine as quickly as possible. So without a mess behind it, it's kind of a mess. But
yeah, I'm still looking into the methodology of that one, because the same survey asked about $10 or $100 or $1,000. So if you're asking me if I want a vaccine and I know that there's a possible money incentive, then I definitely want the vaccine, but if there's $100 in it for me, let's talk about that too. So
Yeah.
who knows? It's a bit of a spread, but the arc of history bends towards more vaccines, more safety and stuff, and we can only hope that people figure their way out as they do.
Yeah, and if you've been watching this program for the past few weeks, we've been doing a lot of forecasting, talking about how things are looking and how they're going to go once people get vaccinated, once these stimulus checks come, and it's getting closer and closer. I mean, now we're talking about what the process is for these things, so that I think is encouraging. I'm sure next week we'll have more news about stimulus checks, more news about vaccines, more news about restaurants and small businesses opening up, and every day we're just getting a little bit closer to whatever the new normal is going to look like. If I can use the cliche.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks everybody again for joining us, and we'll be back next week. Thank you, Alex, as always.
Thank you, Ben.
And we'll see you next week. Take care.